Have you ever looked at a piece of art and felt there was something else going on? Something more than just the shapes and colors.
Hmm.
Maybe like a hidden blueprint or a secret logic, a connection to, I don't know, how things are.
Right, like it holds some deeper secret.
Exactly. What if art wasn't just about showing life, but actually um, doing the process by which life itself emerges?
That's a fascinating thought. Art as emergence itself.
Yeah. What if art could actually be a blueprint for reality? And the artist maybe some kind of cosmic map maker.
Well, that sets the stage perfectly for what we're talking about today.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are plunging headfirst into a really audacious vision, the Holoquibism and Hyperclassical Manifesto, Art as Emergence, which was written by Philip Randolph Lillian back in 2025.
And it's definitely not your average art theory. It's making some really bold claims about reality, about the universe, and where the artist fits into all that.
So, our mission for you today is to unpack this. It's highly conceptual, very ambitious. We want to explore these claims that art can simulate how life emerges by tapping into the universe's basic structures.
We'll break down the core ideas, the actual methods it proposes, and the huge philosophical and even cosmological implications.
Yeah, prepare for some potentially mind-bending aha moments along the way.
Definitely.
Okay, let's unpack this. The manifesto kicks off with this foundational axiom. The universe is hypersymmetric in origin.
Right.
What does that even mean to be hypersymmetric in origin? It sounds like, advanced physics or something.
It does have that feel, yeah. But what's fascinating is how the manifesto presents it. It's not just a metaphor.
Oh.
No, it's positioned as the actual foundational state of all existence. It calls it the primal coherence field, infinite, undifferentiated, and whole.
Infinite, undifferentiated. Okay, so like pure potential.
Yeah.
Before anything specific exists.
Exactly.
Mm.
Imagine a state of pure, boundless potential. It's not empty space. It's a fullness of possibility. Perfectly balanced, completely interwoven before any distinctions are made. A seamless whole.
So an undifferentiated state?
Yeah.
No individual parts, no distinct forms, just this single, unbroken thing.
Pretty much, yeah. A continuum.
How does that challenge our usual idea of an origin? We tend to think of a starting point, right? Like the Big Bang, a specific event.
Right. A singular moment.
But this sounds more like an eternal state that was always there.
That's exactly it. Most cosmologies start with that bang, an event in time that kicks things off. But this manifesto flips that.
How so?
It suggests the origin isn't an event, but an eternal, timeless condition. It asks us to imagine a universe that didn't necessarily begin at a point, but one that just and always has been in this hypersymmetric state.
Huh.
And from that boundless, undifferentiated isness, everything else sort of unfolds. It's a really different way of thinking about creation, isn't it?
It absolutely is. So the universe, at its most basic level, isn't a collection of stuff, but this seamless, integrated whole. That's the primal coherence field.
That's the idea.
Okay, so if that's the origin, this perfect wholeness, how does anything actually become something specific? How do we get complexity?
Well, this is where it gets counterintuitive again. The manifesto states, to create is to reduce hypersymmetry through asymmetry.
Reduce symmetry. So creation isn't adding something, it's taking symmetry away. That feels backward.
It does feel backward from how we usually think about making something new, right? But that's central to the idea.
Okay.
The manifesto lays out this causal chain. From this reduction of symmetry, interdependence emerges. And then from interdependence, life properties unfold.
Interdependence. Okay, explain that link. How does breaking symmetry lead to that?
Think about it like this. Imagine a perfectly smooth, symmetrical sphere. It's complete, right?
Yeah.
But it has no distinct features, nothing to interact with. It's totally self-contained. Now, what if you purposefully introduce an asymmetry? Maybe you carve a groove or add a bump. You break that perfect symmetry. Right. Suddenly you have different parts. And those parts, because they're now distinct and unique, they exist in relation to each other. They become interdependent.
Ah, I see. The perfection is broken, but that break creates the possibility for relationships between the new parts.
Precisely. You introduce an imperfection, you mess up the perfect order, and that's what allows relationships to form. It's like needing a bit of difference to create interaction.
So it's almost like you need to introduce a challenge or a difference for a system to start working.
Exactly. And it's these relationships, these dependencies between the differentiated parts that are the stepping stones to complex systems. And, the manifesto argues, ultimately to life itself.
Hmm.
Think about even a simple biological cell. It's not just a uniform blob, right? It differentiates. It breaks symmetry to form specialized parts, a nucleus, mitochondria, a membrane.
Okay.
And those parts rely on each other for the cell to function as a whole. Without that initial breaking of symmetry, that differentiation, you wouldn't get specialized function, no interaction, no system.
So the breaking of symmetry enables the parts, and the parts relying on each other makes the complex thing work.
That's the core idea, that mutual reliance is the bedrock of complexity. It applies everywhere, really. Biology, society, technology, how complex things come into being often starts with breaking some initial, simpler symmetry.
That is a really compelling way to think about it. Okay, so we have this foundation. Hypersymmetry as the origin, and creation as reducing that symmetry through asymmetry. How does one actually do this in art?
Right. This is where the manifesto introduces two key terms, holoquibism and hyperclassical.
Okay.
Holoquibism is defined as the method, the generative practice of producing hypersymmetry and guiding its reduction through controlled asymmetry.
So holoquibism is the how-to part, the actual technique for making this kind of art.
Exactly. It's the operational framework, the practical craft. And that term generative practice is really important
Why generative?
because it implies a process that actually creates or produces something new, rather than just, say, painting a picture of something that already exists. The artist is setting up conditions for forms to emerge.
Like growing something almost.
Kind of, yeah.
Right.
Like initiating a sequence of events that results in an emergent form. It's less about rendering, more about orchestrating.
Uh-huh.
And the emphasis on controlled asymmetry is crucial.
Controlled, not random.
Absolutely. This isn't just smashing things up. The artist is like a sculptor, carefully and intentionally introducing imbalance to guide the process. It's about precision in how you break the symmetry, so you sculpt new relationships, not just create chaos.
Okay, that makes sense. And the other term was hyperclassical.
Yes, hyperclassical is described as the ethos, the return to eternal principles of form, proportion, and resonance, transposed into higher dimensional space.
Eternal principles, but in higher dimensions. Okay, now things are getting really interesting. What does that mean?
This is where the philosophy underpinning the method really takes flight. The idea is that things like the golden ratio, harmonic intervals, classical proportions, these aren't just human inventions or styles from ancient Greece.
They're more fundamental.
Yes. The manifesto posits them as universal constants, fundamental laws of cosmic order, and the higher dimensional space part is key. It means these principles aren't just limited to our familiar 2D drawings or 3D sculptures.
They apply everywhere, even beyond what we can see or easily imagine.
That's the claim. It elevates classicism from being just a style to being a reflection of universal law. It suggests there's an inherent rightness or beauty to these forms that resonates across all levels of existence, transcending dimensions.
Wow. So beauty and order aren't just in the eye of the beholder, they're woven into the fabric of the universe.
That's the implication. It reframes beauty as something intrinsic, not just subjective preference. It's a return to these classical principles, but seeing them through this much bigger universal lens. Beauty as a reflection of cosmic structure.
Okay, let's dive into the how of holoquibism then, the actual workshop. The manifesto says works begin with generating pure symmetry, these coherence fields, the infinite potential before asymmetry. Exactly. So before you can create anything specific, you have to first build this field of infinite potential, like preparing the canvas, but way more fundamental.
That's a good way to put it. Think of these coherence fields like an untouched block of perfectly symmetrical marble, or maybe a perfectly ordered crystal lattice. It's full of latent potential, just waiting for that first disturbance to activate it.
And how do you build that?
The manifesto gets quite technical here. It specifies methods like using rotational grammars. These aren't just arbitrary spins. They're based on specific mathematical increments, 6 degrees, 12, 24, 48, orthogonal axes.
Okay.
These precise increments act as the building blocks. They dictate how elements repeat and interlock, creating these foundational, intricate patterns right from the start, like building a complex symmetrical base layer.
What else? Are there other techniques for building these fields?
Yes. It mentions multi-spin point configurations. Think of spin points as centers of rotation or axes of symmetry.
Okay.
By using multiple spin points, the artist dramatically increases the complexity and the potential of that initial symmetrical field. Imagine lots of interlocking gears, all spinning maybe differently, but contributing to one unified symmetrical design.
Getting complex already.
And then there's recursive layering and geometric tiling. This involves repeatedly layering and fitting together geometric patterns, building up incredibly dense, intricate symmetrical fields. The goal is to create this powerful sense of infinite undifferentiated potential, a boundless space of pure possibility before any specific form emerges.
So you build this perfect, intricate order, and then you deliberately mess with it. But strategically, right, how does that controlled asymmetry actually get introduced?
Right, it's very deliberate, not random at all. It's described as an act of precise intervention. The manifesto talks about manual symmetry breaking, emphasizing its precise, aesthetic, intentional.
So the artists make specific choices about how and where to break the pattern.
Exactly. It's purposeful sculpting, not accidental damage. They're guiding the emergence by choosing exactly how to introduce that first disturbance, that first imbalance, to achieve a desired kind of unfolding. It's constructive differentiation.
Are there other ways besides manual breaking?
Yes, they also use algorithmic noise. This is described as controlled chaos with mathematical constraints.
Algorithms.
Okay, here algorithms introduce deviations, but within carefully set mathematical limits. This ensures that while the structure differentiates and gets more complex, it doesn't just fall apart into noise. It maintains coherence while breaking into new forms.
Like shaking a pattern just enough to make it interesting, but not enough to destroy it?
Kind of, yes.
Yeah.
Or think of creating specific ripple patterns on a perfectly still pond. Another method is asymmetric color imposition.
Color isn't just decoration here, right?
Not at all. In Holoquibism, color itself acts as a force that breaks symmetry. By applying colors unevenly, or in patterns that aren't symmetrical, the artist introduces another layer of visual imbalance. This further breaks down that initial coherence field, creating areas of visual tension, focus, and differentiation.
Interesting. And you mentioned this mirrors something called UCTE.
Yes, the unified coherence theory of everything, which the manifesto draws on heavily. This stage, introducing controlled asymmetry, mirrors the UCTE principle of reduction of symmetry into localized resonance.
Localized resonance, what does that mean in the art?
It signifies the formation of distinct, vibrant, sort of energetically active areas within that previously uniform field. Think of energy that was spread evenly now concentrating and vibrating in specific spots. These become focal points, areas of intensity within the artwork.
So the asymmetry creates these hot spots of activity.
Exactly. And it really highlights why controlled asymmetry is so critical. It's not just about breaking things. It's about guiding the emergence of complexity and these lifelike properties. Without control, you get randomness. With control, you get the beginnings of new order, nascent complexity.
And you said this isn't just a single step, it builds on itself.
Precisely. It's recursive. The manifesto stresses that each cycle of symmetry plus asymmetry feeds into the next. The output of one stage becomes the input for the next one.
Creating a loop.
Yes, an iterative loop of increasing complexity. And as new layers of asymmetry are introduced and integrated, something fascinating happens. New spin points create emergent dimensional axes.
Emergent dimensional axes. So the process itself generates new dimensions within the artwork.
That's the idea. Not necessarily extraspatial dimensions like length or width, but more like higher conceptual dimensions, axes of organization, relationship, and information that increase the artwork's depth and complexity, becomes multi-layered, structurally and conceptually.
So the artwork literally gets more multidimensional as it develops.
In a very real structural sense, yes. And the complexity ramps up exponentially. The manifesto even gives a formula for it.
A formula for complexity growth.
Yes, the implication is huge. It allows the art to potentially mirror the kind of staggering complexity we see in natural systems.
And how does that relate back to life?
Well, as this recursive process unfolds, multiple levels of interdependent patterning evolve, simulating the emergence of networked life systems. This is a huge claim.
Yeah, sounds like it.
It's saying the artwork doesn't just look like life superficially, it starts to function like it internally, with intricate dependencies and relationships between its parts. The structure mirrors the network nature of biological systems.
Wow. So the self-referential process itself is key to simulating emergence.
Fundamental to it, according to the manifesto.
Okay, let's circle back to color. You said it's not decoration, it's field curvature. That sounds significant, like color is actively shaping the piece.
It is. It's a structural component, not just aesthetic dressing. It acts as a direct modulator of that coherence field, literally influencing the forms that emerge.
How? What do things like hue or saturation do structurally?
Okay, so hue shifts correspond to symmetry gradient changes. Imagine a scale, a gradient, where symmetry is slowly breaking down or changing. A shift in hue, maybe from blue to red, could visually map that transition.
So the color tells you about the level of symmetry or asymmetry in that area.
Exactly. It's a visual language for the underlying structure, signaling the degree of order or disorder, or the energy level, perhaps.
And saturation. The manifesto says it controls depth perception of hyperfractals. What are hyperfractals and how does saturation give them depth?
Hyperfractals, which we'll touch on more, are these incredibly complex multidimensional forms that go beyond standard fractals. Varying the saturation, how intense or pale a color is, can create an illusion of depth within these forms. A highly saturated area might feel like it's popping out or receding deeper into the piece, guiding your eye through complex layers that defy normal perspective. It makes a flat surface feel incredibly deep and multi-layered.
And luminance contrast. Light and dark.
That acts as the energy density of the composition. High contrast areas, stark lights against darks, signify points of intense energy or activity. They grab your eye, create focal points. Low contrast areas might feel more diffuse, more like latent potential.
So color becomes this functional tool for mapping the structure, depth, and energy of the artwork.
Precisely. It redefines color theory within this framework. It's not about subjective feeling, it's about conveying quantifiable information about the field and its emergent properties.
Okay, we've really dug into the method, Holoquibism. Let's revisit the philosophy behind it, hyperclassical. You said, where Holoquibism is the craft, hyperclassical is the law. It's the guiding ethos.
That's right. It provides the why for the how. And its core principle is this idea of eternal form in higher space.
The idea that things like the golden ratio aren't just human constructs, but universal.
Exactly. The manifesto explicitly states the golden ratio, harmonic intervals, and classical proportion are the same in 2D, 3D, or hyperspace. This is profound.
It implies these principles are baked into the universe, regardless of dimension.
Yes, it's not just about liking Greek statues.
Yeah.
It positions these aesthetic and mathematical principles as fundamental aspects of cosmic order. Think about how the golden ratio pops up naturally.
Like in seashells or galaxies.
Exactly. In our 3D world, hyperclassical form suggests this consistency, this inherent rightness of these forms extends into realms beyond our easy perception. It implies beauty and order are hardwired into the universe's structure.
A kind of universal beauty standard set by the cosmos itself?
You could put it that way, yeah. A resonance that exists irrespective of dimensions.
And then there's the law of interdependence. The manifesto links symmetry breaking directly to life emerging.
Yes, it reiterates that crucial causal chain. Only when hypersymmetry is broken do mutual dependencies arise, and only through these can life emerge.
So breaking the perfect order isn't a defect, it's necessary.
It's presented as an absolute true requisite. That act of differentiation, introducing asymmetry, is what allows distinct elements to form. And only then can they enter into these mutual dependencies. Without that break, you just have a single inert whole.
Incapable of the relationships needed for life?
Exactly. It's through those intricate codependent relationships that the dynamic, self-organizing properties we associate with life can start to emerge.
Does this have broader implications beyond just art or biology?
I think it does. It prompts us to ask, is a controlled form of disorder, a strategic breaking of symmetry, actually a necessary catalyst for higher order organization in any complex system? Social systems, technology, maybe even thought itself.
That disruption of simplicity might be the pathway to complexity.
It seems to be what the manifesto is suggesting.
Which brings us back to the artist's role. It's radically redefined here. The artist is not the originator of form, but the conductor of emergence, guiding coherence through the gates of asymmetry.
Right.
So the artist isn't the sole genius creator, but more like a facilitator, a guide. That's a massive shift.
It really is. It moves away from the idea of the artist inventing forms out of thin air, ex nihilo. Instead, they're seen as discovering and channeling universal principles that are already latent.
Latent in that hypersymmetric field.
Precisely. They aren't inventing the forms. They're revealing them. Their specific skill lies in guiding coherence through the gates of asymmetry. They're the ones who deliberately introduce the controlled perturbations, the specific breaks that allow new forms and interdependencies to emerge from that underlying potential.
It requires a different mindset then, doesn't it? Less about me and my expression, more about universal discovery.
Absolutely. Less personal expression, perhaps, and more about orchestrating these fundamental cosmic principles. Being a participant in a larger creative process, rather than the sole author.
So, connecting this back to the UCTE, the unified coherence theory of everything, The manifesto claims Holoquibism is an artistic embodiment of it.
Yes.
What does that mean practically? It's saying this art isn't just like the universe's creation process, it's a small-scale model of it. That seems incredibly bold.
It is incredibly bold, and the manifesto doesn't shy away from it. It states clearly that a holoquivist artwork isn't just a pretty pattern. It is a microcosmic emergence model.
A model, like a scientific model.
In a sense, yes. It suggests the art can provide actual insight into fundamental reality. It maps the UCTE principles directly onto the art process.
Okay, break that down. How does it map?
So for hypersymmetry in UCTE, which is the coherence vacuum, the undifferentiated infinite, the art equivalent is that initial pure symmetrical field the artist creates.
Right, the starting point.
Then asymmetry in UCTE is symmetry-breaking, localization of resonance, dimensional expansion. In the art, that's the artist introducing those controlled perturbations, leading to distinct forms, layers, those hotspots of energy, the emergence of new conceptual dimensions.
The breaking and differentiating stage.
Exactly. Then interdependence in UCTE is defined as relational coherence between reduced elements, network stability. In the artwork, as symmetry breaks, you get distinct elements that become mutually reliant, creating a stable, interconnected network within the piece, mirroring how parts of a complex system interact.
The relationships that form after the break.
Yes. And finally, life in UCTE is described as self-referential, self-sustaining interdependence embedded in a coherent field. The artwork, through its recursive nature and complex evolving patterns, aims to exhibit properties akin to living systems dynamically interacting and evolving within its own structure.
So the art isn't just aesthetic, it's trying to function as a dynamic model.
That's the core claim. Art as a kind of observable, tangible instantiation of these deep scientific and philosophical ideas.
Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts again. The technical grammars, especially those rotational grammars you mentioned, there's a whole language there, right? Each doing something different.
Yes, absolutely. These aren't just suggestions, they're specific instructions that guide the symmetry generation and profoundly influence the final emergent properties. The manifesto details several types.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Okay, so there's Fibonacci rotation, which is associated with organic growth, nonlinear progression. Think spirals like a pine cone or sunflower. It generates patterns that feel natural and unfolding.
Interesting.
Then there's prime rotation, characterized by unpredictable, irregular distribution. This creates patterns that have an underlying order, but don't repeat, obviously, giving a sense of unexpected complexity.
Keeps you guessing.
Kind of.
Yeah.
There's gold ratio rotation, linked to harmonic spirals, natural resonance. This uses those classical proportions we talked about, aiming for compositions that feel inherently balanced and beautiful.
The hyperclassical principles embedded in the rotation itself.
Exactly. Then you have grammars for controlling the speed of complexification. Exponential rotation for rapid complexity escalation, building intricacy quickly, versus logarithmic rotation for controlled, smooth complexity growth, where patterns unfold more gradually.
Different speeds of emergence.
Right. And harmonic series rotation aims for refinement and detail without disrupting form, like adding subtle textures or layers. And crucially, there's randomized rotation with constraints.
Balancing order and chaos.
Precisely. It introduces unpredictability, but within limits, so the structure remains coherent. It stops it from dissolving into pure noise. These grammars are the artist's toolkit for shaping how emergence happens.
And it's not just concepts, there are actual equations, mathematical blueprints.
Yes, and this is where the claim to rigor really comes in. The manifesto provides explicit mathematical formulas that aren't just illustrative, they are described as compositional blueprints.
So the math directly guides the art creation.
That's the intention. For example, there's the spin dimensionality relation, an equation showing how the rotational complexity, the spin of the initial field, translates into higher conceptual dimensions in the artwork. More complex spin, richer dimensionality.
Okay.
Then there's a formula for symmetry breaking and dimensional expansion. It quantifies how reducing symmetry directly leads to an increase in complexity in those emergent dimensions. It mathematically links the artist's action of breaking symmetry to the resulting structural depth.
It measures the effect of the break.
In a formal way, yes. There are also formulas for things like doubling spin, describing how complexity can increase exponentially with iteration and hypofractal dimensionality.
Hyperfractals again. What are they exactly in this context?
They're described as forms that go beyond standard fractals. They embody self-similarity not just in our usual 3 dimensions, but across these higher Hilbert space dimensions derived from the spin complexity. Think infinitely complex, self-similar structures existing in a conceptually higher space.
Wow.
And finally, a recursive growth formula formalizes that iterative expansion and self-similarity, linking directly back to simulating networked life systems. It models how the artwork grows and evolves in a way analogous to living organisms.
So the math provides this rigorous framework that dictates choices and ensures the art embodies these deep principles.
Exactly. It aims to transform aesthetic creation into something more akin to an empirical investigation grounded in mathematical precision.
So how does all this theory and math actually show up in the real world? What kind of art does it produce? The manifesto says it's not limited to one medium.
That's right. The principles are seen as universal, so they can manifest in various forms, depending on what the artist wants to emphasize.
Like paintings. How would a flat painting show hypersymmetry reduction?
Well, a painting would be a 2D projection of these processes. You might see incredibly complex interlocking patterns suggesting infinite depth. Visual cues would show symmetry being broken in controlled ways. And color, used as that field curvature, would be crucial for creating illusions of depth, energy, and transformation on the flat surface.
Okay. What about sculpture?
Sculpture is defined as 3D interdependent structures. Here, the physical form itself would embody that reliance between parts. Imagine a piece where components physically lean on each other, interlock, or support each other in such a way that removing one part affects the whole structure's stability. You can physically see the network.
Tangible interdependence.
Exactly. Then there are generative digital works, described as algorithmic hyperspace simulations. This might be the most natural fit, really.
Because of the math and algorithms.
Precisely. Digital tools can directly translate those formulas and grammars into visual output, creating dynamic, evolving forms that would be incredibly difficult, maybe impossible, to make by hand. They can actually simulate these higher dimensional spaces and emergent processes unfolding over time.
That makes sense. What else?
The manifesto mentions architectural resonance spaces, buildings, or structures designed to embed coherent field principles.
Architecture based on this. What would that be like?
Imagine walking through a space where the proportions, the angles, the flow, all based on things like the golden ratio or harmonic intervals, are designed to create a specific feeling, a sense of resonance or coherence. Like sacred geometry, but perhaps based on these newer principles, influencing experience through form.
Fascinating. And the last one.
Immersive VR environments, described as walk-through hyperfractals.
Whoa! Stepping inside the art.
Exactly. VR offers the most direct, immersive experience of these ideas. You're not just looking at a representation of higher dimensional space or hyperfractals. You could potentially navigate through them. You could truly enter the artwork.
How would that VR experience be different from looking at a painting in terms of understanding emergence?
It could be fundamentally different. A painting shows you the result, a snapshot of emergence. In VR, you might experience the process. Imagine walking through a virtual field as new dimensional axes unfold around you, seeing interdependent patterns literally grow and connect in response to your movement or over time.
So you shift from observer to participant.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
It allows for a much deeper, more embodied understanding of what emergence might actually feel like within this theoretical framework. Each medium offers different ways in, but they all aim to make these core ideas tangible.
This really takes it beyond just art theory, doesn't it? It's connecting art to cosmology, even spirituality. The manifesto states, hypersymmetry hyperspace is the divine order inherent in creation.
It does, absolutely. That statement links the core artistic principle, hypersymmetry, directly to a view of the universe's ultimate structure as being divinely ordered, a state of perfect, unified coherence.
So the principles the artist uses aren't just artistic tools, they're reflections of universal truth.
That's the implication. Not human inventions, but glimpses into the fundamental nature of reality, maybe even the mind of God, to use a loaded phrase.
Yeah.
It elevates the whole endeavor significantly.
And then it says, the act of symmetry breaking is the cosmic genesis, the moment where infinite potential becomes finite form.
Yeah, drawing that powerful parallel again. Just as the artist breaks symmetry to create specific forms, the universe itself, in its origin moment, the cosmic genesis underwent symmetry breaking.
Transforming infinite potential into our finite reality.
Exactly. It positions artistic creation as a kind of reenactment of that fundamental cosmic event. It resonates with creation myths, but gives it this scientific and mathematical framing. Art becomes a way to participate in that primal act of creation.
And after that break, the interdependence that follows is the seedbed of consciousness. That's a huge leap. How does consciousness come into it?
It is a huge leap and a profound claim. It suggests consciousness isn't separate or mysterious, but an emergent property of highly networked, interdependent systems.
So as the universe became more complex and interconnected after the initial symmetry breaking, the conditions for consciousness arose.
That's the idea. Consciousness emerges from relationship and complexity. It implies that art, by simulating these very conditions of networked interdependence, might offer insights into how consciousness itself originates.
Could art model the birth of consciousness?
It's suggesting it might model the conditions for it. It pushes us to think about our own minds and the interconnectedness of everything. Maybe complex interdependence is the pathway to self-awareness.
And it connects this to the anthropic principle in physics, saying the universe seems fine-tuned for life, just like the artist fine-tunes the artwork.
Yes, it draws that direct analogy. The anthropic principle in physics mirrors this artistic truth. The universe's constants seem just right for life. The Holoquibist artist carefully adjusts the asymmetries for lifelike emergence in their work.
So it's almost like the universe itself is a Holoquibist artwork designed for life.
That's precisely the parallel it draws. It implies a kind of fundamental artistic intelligence or design woven into reality. The artist becomes a microcosm of this cosmic designer, tuning the conditions for emergence. It suggests the universe isn't accidental, and neither is this kind of art.
Which leads to the conclusion that each piece is both art and cosmology, a fragment of the universe remembering its origin.
Yeah. Viewing the art with that understanding completely changes the experience, doesn't it? It's not just looking at patterns, it's a philosophical contemplation. You're invited to see the universe's origin story reflected right there in the art, a meditation on existence.
And importantly, this isn't just wild speculation. The manifesto is apparently built on a pretty solid foundation of research, detailed in appendices.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not just presented as artistic inspiration. It's framed with comprehensive supporting pillars that aim to give it academic and practical weight. They show a deep, interdisciplinary background.
Can you give us a quick overview?
Sure. Appendix A, called Literature Foundations or the Research Lineage, pulls from generative art, complexity theory, the physics of symmetry breaking, philosophy, even things like cellular automata, showing the breadth of ideas it builds on.
Okay.
Appendix B, the methodological framework or the workshop of the Holoquibist, gives the practical step-by-step process. Generating symmetry, controlled asymmetry, recursion, using color structurally, reflection, the how-to.
A practical guide.
Right. Appendix C, formal physics and mathematics, or the equation of form, contains all those mathematical equations we discussed, linking spin to dimension, quantifying symmetry breaking, defining hyperfractals, modeling growth. It's the mathematical blueprint.
The hard math part.
Then Appendix D is empirical validation, framed as the scientific verification. This details attempts to validate the ideas through computer simulations, analogies to physics and biology, studies on how audiences perceive the work, even using machine learning to recognize the patterns,
Trying to prove it works.
or at least demonstrate its consistency and potential.
Yeah.
And finally, Appendix E, the cosmological and spiritual dimension, or art as divine cosmogenesis, delves deeper into those big ideas about hypersymmetry as divine order and the connection to the anthropic principle.
So it's a very thoroughly developed framework.
It definitely presents itself as one. It's inviting serious engagement on multiple levels: artistic, scientific, philosophical, even spiritual.
Well, we've certainly covered a huge amount of ground today, from hypersymmetry as the cosmic origin, through the methods of Holoquibism and the philosophy of hyperclassical form, to the idea of art actually enacting emergence.
Yeah, the core idea is art not just depicting life, but potentially using the universe's own creative rules to simulate how life arises from that fundamental symmetry. Art as a microcosm of cosmic creation.
It really is. The manifesto wraps up with that powerful statement. Art is the interface where hypersymmetry and asymmetry meet, where the infinite folds into the finite, and the finite remembers its source. Through Holoquibism and hyperclassical form, we not only depict life, we enact the very process by which life emerges.
Pretty grand concluding thought.
It is.
Thanks.
So it leaves us with this question. If art really can model the process of emergence, what does that imply about any creative act? Is the creator just an observer, or are they actively participating in this fundamental universal process?
Does it change how we see creativity itself?
Exactly. How might understanding this manifesto change how you look at, well, anything that emerges? A painting, sure, but also a forest, a weather system, maybe even the evolution of an idea.
It's definitely something to ponder. I'd encourage you listening to maybe start looking for those patterns yourself: emergence, interdependence, symmetry breaking in the world around you.
Hmm.
Once you grasp these principles, even just conceptually, you might start seeing echoes of them everywhere, in nature, in technology, maybe even in how your own thoughts connect and evolve.
The universe as the ultimate Holoquibist artwork.
Perhaps. Or at least a universe constantly engaged in the act of emergence, driven by these fundamental dynamics of symmetry and asymmetry. It's a fascinating lens to look through.